Naon sih itu mata goblok pisan anjing. Tolol anggar bro.
Mau panggil baru dakum?
Pasti lagi maroal anjing.
Hah?
Pasti lagi maroal kenaon. Pakai lagi. Mm, mm, mm. Mm, 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 mm. Mm, 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 mm. Nasi balmon dipakai di XP, Pip. Nasi balmon dipakai di XP.
Ulti
Emang
buff.
di buff.
Skill 2 di buff. Sudah digancang putaran.
Gancang eureuna, gancang atau lila. Gancang eureun. Tapi eureuna gancang oge. Dia baheula.
Mungkin aja jadi delaynya terlila.
Hah?
Ulti Balmon delaynya terlila.
Oh.
Dipakai.
XPY, ini tadi cuma tolol di anjing. Atur aja lah. Wow. Namlok. Oke. Jam 20. Bentar. Masih moto3. Oke, santuy. Masih moto3. Masih moto. Oh iya. Pasti ku bisa. Pero anjing langsung drop wae K25, K28 gelo. Anjing kunaon ya?
pada respect motor-motor.
Jika nama laptopnya sih. Tuing. Cepat bangkit dan berpikir. Semua tak berakhir di sini. Pasti ku bisa melanjutkannya. Kau bisa menerima melanjutkannya. Oh pasti kau bisa. Eh, eh, eh. Dan berpikir semua tak berakhir di sini. Ih anjing, tolol pisan. Tololnya teka tulungan. Bapeula atuh anjing teh. Ah, tadi anjing bodoh. Wiu 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 wiu. Wiu 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 wiu. Jika bisa terirot melanjutkannya. Jika bisa nerima melanjutkannya. Segadak naon sih anjing jadi jungler tolol bisa monyet.
Pacotan bom set ibu usia
Hapus ML anjing. Ripuhkeun we hungkul. Dilahirkan sebagai beban anjing. Iya. Oh yeah. Aing datang mon. Mana mon? Anjing. Ku bisa awankannya. Ku bisa menerima melanjutkannya. Oh pasti ku bisa. Oh iya. Bahkan anjing Ih, ih, anjing. I feel Nah, tuh kemana tuh goblok gitu. Ya gitu terus. Anjing kayak besar anjing. Balana cerolol. Satu anjing. I'm not insane, I'm not in. Da, 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 ya tuh kak dia goblok. Ah, tolol pisan anjing. Oh iya. Pasti ku bisa. Anjing, 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 anjing. Mana itu, oi? Garoblok anjing. Mana tuh bang ah? Ampun bang, ampun bang. Udah bang ya, udah. Anjing. Ya udah kita ini aja lah. Windows Capture yang mana nih? Windows bukan ini bukan Smart Connect ya. Oke, kita yes display capture bukan kan juga oke. Moto timing
Beres, Bob?
Hah?
Beres.
Belum. Oke, foto timing. Oke. Gak ada nih. Oh, Windows. Nah, gini kan. A. Oke, server utama. Si anjing. Ya, anjing. Adblock mana adblock? Ih, goblok. Gila. Anger monyet si anjing. Adblocker tuh di mana sih, Pip? Adblocker tuh?
Handblock.
Heeh. Mana mana satu make anjing.
Oh, ad blocker, the extension. Biasanya.
Aing ngomong adblocker anjing.
Extension, Bob. Extension.
Wah anjing. Manjing nih, goblok. Anjing, Lila. Yuk, pindahan. Monyet, monyet. Non di error anjing goblok. Apa ini? Window. Iya nya. Ini kan gini. Oh iya sih. Tab nah. Semuanya ini. Anger goblok. Timingnya gitu deh. Timing anjing. Nah gitu anjing. Mungkin terus kita ke ini. Anjing kopi. Tuh anjing. Goblok gimana sih? Anjing mana sih adblock kata eueuh. Ah, ngeri si monyet mana? Ah, ngeri si monyet.
Across the line as well behind him. I think that was Forsato, wasn't it? And he doesn't improve. He stays in second after being dislodged by David Almanza. Quiles coming through turn 14. This is looking a little bit better, but it's that pesky final sector that just seems to keep getting his attention. Let's see what we get through here this time. Quiles 0.118 off at the moment. That would put him second if he can hold it, but let's see what he does across the line. Quiles goes third, so lost less time and moved up all the way to the top three.
Yeah, that's a bit better from the number 28. I don't want to speak too soon, but that should be Quiles pretty much safely through into the top 14. He's got a nice buffer now back to Nico Carrara and go outside of that top 14. Adrian Fernandez doesn't improve on his latest lap time. He's now been shoved down to P4, of course, but 3 Hondas in the top 4. 4 Hondas inside the top 5. The Hondas are looking pretty strong in Portimao, which is good to see. Almanza for Forsato, podium finishers last time out. Adrian Fernandez, technically a podium finisher, technically not, whichever way you want to put it. He did cross the line in P3, but of course got disqualified, and Luca Daness had a little bit of a disappointment over in Malaysia, but was a podium finisher back in Indonesia.
For the sake of the stats, Adrian Fernandez is a podium finisher, but not last time out. Let's put it like that. I can tell you, we are already quicker than actually the practice 2 session last year here at the same time, and also done the counted practice on Saturday morning. So the times are good, even if the conditions perhaps. Really get onto the racing line too much, but Dennis Foggia bails out anyway. Marco Morelli was on the inside line that time around, but I think he's all okay. As you can see, your top 14 riders who are moving straight to Q2. It is Almanza, Forsato, Quiles, Foggia, Fernandez, Lunetta, Kelso, Piqueras, Carpe, Peroni, your top 10, and they're going to be joined as things stand by Ogden, Danish, O'Gorman and Uriarte. But 7 minutes just under still to go. It can all be turned on its head just yet.
Certainly can. I am slightly surprised the teams have left it as late as it is to try and get out there. They're going to know more than us, of course, and they are the professionals, but it looks very dark. I'd have thought that the riders and teams who are sat outside the top 14 or languishing around outside the top 10 would have fired their way out of pit lane a little bit quicker.
We have just had a couple of spots of rain on our comms box position as well, so they're very, very fine at the moment, but the rain is in the air as we take a look at Matteo Battelli, the number 18, coming down at 13. This is down towards 14. Battelli at the moment just a couple of places out from where he needs to be. 16th place at the moment, but he is just over a second under away from the top time. The top 15 covered by under a second. That's how close it is in Moto 3 at a circuit where almost all the riders know it really, really well. Battelli's going for the line. This should put him top 14. Oh, he lost a lot of time in that final sector, so Battelli has to go again and has less than 6 minutes to get a strong enough lap time to put him directly into the pole battle.
Yeah, just a few riders we can see they're struggling in that final split. It took Quiles a good 3 laps to nail it enough where he didn't lose a lot of time, and we can now see more spots of rain on our commentary box window, and the rain is starting to come down a little bit heavier from what we can see from our vantage point. You could just see in the background there, it looks a little bit less clear from the pictures. Scott Ogden, he won't mind if it starts to rain now. He's inside that top 14. The same goes for Danish, O'Gorman and Uriarte there as well. Not enough yet to really properly disturb the riders from what we can see, but yeah, a potentially sketchy final 5 minutes, and there is the white cross, the red crossed white flag, signifying that there is rain in the air.
You'll be talking about blue sunshine in a minute.
Not said it this weekend,
well, I don't think we're going to do either with the weather forecast with you. So, well, Scoggers is 11th at the moment. That's good enough for the number 19. Brian Uriarte is the rider at risk, as you can see on that graphic on the timing tower. Oh, that's really heavy rain now over at turn 3, and I'd be very surprised. Okay, it might be hold your breath time, because I'd be surprised if that is exactly only the amount of rain we get. This now probably means we are going to have a bit of a period of rain. You can see Joel Esteban was absolutely furious with his teammate there. That's Valentin Peroni up ahead. Joel Esteban is only a replacement rider, I'll remind you. He is filling in for Jacob Ralston. Valentin Peroni is a full-time rider. So Joel Esteban picking his fight. Oh, turn 13 is wet on line there. And that might just be it, you know. You can see in the background all the mountains got a load of cloud on top. The white flag with the red cross is being waved frantically over in that marshalling position as well at turn 13. And Joel Esteban's anger, well, fair to say that being down in P23 is going to make you angry. We are going to have a very premature end here to Moto 3 practice in terms of the order. The session will continue to tick on by, but unfortunately the lap times will not continue to tick on down. I reckon that is all she wrote here in Portimao for Moto 3 practice.
Yeah, 100%. You can see the rain now very clearly through our commentary box window as well on the start-finish straight. Yeah. So that is all she wrote in terms of getting times in to try and get into that top 14. I did say I was very surprised that they left it that late. There was clearly rain in the air. You could see from the slow-mo shots we had earlier on in the session, the camera lenses showed it as well, but I don't know, the riders and teams just took their time to get back out on circuit. A lot of these riders didn't get a lap time in on fresh rubber as well. So, I mean, the riders in the top 14 won't care one iota. They're inside Q2 tomorrow afternoon. Yep. But there's some names there that we normally see in Q2. Who were
pretty recent rounds.
Yeah, Batelli as well. Yeah. Who going to be disappointed.
Yeah, very disappointed. Eddie O'Shea as well has been very, very close in recent rounds to moving through to that Q2. Cormac Buchanan, of course, he crashed earlier on today in FP1, but that's a real disaster. It's a real sour end, really, to our afternoon as well, because we like a last-minute shootout for supremacy in Q2. Scott Ogdenote rolling down pit lane. He'll be very happy with that. 11th place, and he comes in, and that'll be about everything for the CIP Green Power rider. The British star has already enjoyed his best season in Moto 3, but will be always looking to do more. You can see further down as well just how lucky Brian Uriarte was. Uriarte is in by a 1/10 of a second. Yeah, Nicola Carraro is the rider who doesn't come through. And Nicola Carraro, gets a, I don't know if that was a pat or a slap on the head. Carraro not happy. Contrast and emotions over here though. David Almanza, well, after that first podium last time out that he wasn't able to stand on. P1, smart strategy though, all round from Leopard. They got the riders out there, they got the lap times bagged, and they are picking up the rewards for it now.
Yeah, certainly. I was P1 on Friday over in Australia. The same goes for Misano as well. So yeah, in last few rounds, David Almanza has come on strong on a Friday. Understandably so. Guido Pini isn't looking too impressed. Didn't manage to get a lap time, and you can see just how wet the levers are, that it really did start to pour down. And see there Alex Escreech for the Clint Ford factory team in Moto 2. All of those riders and teams will be having a good look at the ground and the skies ahead of their session just over 10 minutes before the Moto 2 riders head out, potentially on wet tyres, but as we say, blue skies, not blue sunshine piercing through the clouds, which is good news for Moto 2 and of course MotoGP coming up later on.
Yeah, the day is opening, but it's all too late for Moto 3 practice riders. That is the day closing off for them. They'll be back out tomorrow morning in the company of ourselves up here in comms. Not raining up here in the comms box though. That's always a bonus. Unfortunately, my lunch break's after this one, so it looks like I'm going to have to run back to the media centre in Donna jackets just so I don't get too wet and spoil my hair.
It's a tough life, isn't it?
Very tough life. It's very hard to spoil my hair as well. It's already awful. Furasato straight in down into the box. He'll be happy with that, straight through as well, just over a 1/10 and a quarter off of what David Almanza was able to do. But P2 for your Malaysian GP winner, Max Quiles, probably the luckiest one of them all as he gets pushed down pit lane. He left it late, but was just in time, third.
You could say lucky, but you could also say timed it to perfection. The Aspar team in Quiles recognised that they needed a lap time. The clouds were rolling in. up inside the top two on Friday afternoon behind a fellow Honda rider Almanza is promising for the Japanese rider.
I'll tell you what though, the checkered flag's already out here, and that is going to be very, very interesting for the session coming up in just a few moments' time. Moto 2 faced the same situation, the top 14 in Moto 2 moving through to Q2 directly, everyone else going through into the Q1 shootout, and really in conditions like this, let's see if that is the last of the rain. I'm not so sure though, we'll have to wait and see. Adrian Fernandez completes your top 5. He'll be looking to try and match his teammate going into Saturday and try and get that podium back, which he had snatched away from him last time.
Yeah, he did. So 3 Hondas inside the top 5. Luca Nanetta making it, another Honda in that top 6. Kelso looked strong today, didn't he? Of course, we didn't see the full potential of, well, pretty much all the riders in that final 5 minutes with the rain coming down, but... Kelso just explaining to one of his team members down there, just looking a little bit unsettled on the front end potentially. I think we can see from our cameras anyway that, especially through that final corner, as you said, Kiko, it's really bumpy and really hard to control the machine. The front end trying to wash away from you with the suspension, unloading and loading. Looks really difficult to tame the roller.
Sebenarnya kan ini 200 kan, 20 plus 10 plus 10, 20.
Special memories, we alluded to them earlier on, of that Junior GP win. That's one of his first Grand Prix done here as well. Kelso very, very familiar with this Portimao circuit. Tayo Furusato looking to try and match his Sepang successes, and you can just see how wet it was out there. That's the number 22 of David Almanza, the front fairing there, just picking up a full load of rain spots, not quite into the 46s. If conditions are good later on in the weekend, perhaps we'll get near Jose Antonio Rueda's lap record, but for the time being, David Almanza is top. P1 for the number 22, just ahead of Furusato, Quiles, Foggia and Fernandez, as we said. Luca Lanetta left it late but came through to P6 ahead of Kelso. Angel Pegueras looking to wrap up P2 in a title fight. He was 8th. Carpe, fresh from that top 5 finish last time out, in 9th, and Valentin Peroni back in the top 10. Ogden Danish, Casey O'Gorman and Brian Uriarte, 3 of our replacement riders right there inside Q2 tomorrow straight away. From Moto 3 practice. Hard luck for Nicola Carrara and Matteo Vitali, who left it late. Likewise, Marco Morelli. Guido Pini's a headlining act going through Q1. Jesus Rios rounding out the field. And that is it. The stylish David Almanza, particularly over the crest of that hill down towards turn 9, leads the way into Saturday Moto 3. But coming up next, Moto 2 in the company of Lewis and Neil. Enjoy.
Benea Bastianini, who was riding an Ital Trans
Enggak. Emang
hujan 485.
but his immediate challenge, and the challenge of all 29 riders in Moto 2 here, is a potentially troublesome practice session here this afternoon. If you were with us moments ago and saw how the Moto 3 session ended, it ended with a little bit of rain falling. So just what kind of track conditions are we going to be faced with in around about 9 minutes time when the Moto 2 session gets underway? Going into this session, Aaron Canet fastest after this morning's first practice session. A new all-time lap record for the 44, saw him a 10th.5 clear of Jake Dixon. Seneragius back something like his best earlier today in third. Celestino Vietti fourth, ahead of points leader Diogo Moreira. Albert Arenas, Tony Arbolino between Moreira and his chief rival Manu Gonzalez, who was 8th quickest on his intact GP machine. Of course, lost his all-time lap record to Aaron Canet earlier on today. The other championship contender, Barry Baltus, well, he was 10th on a 1:41.9, less than half a second off the pace. Of course, the lap times from this morning do not count towards anything other than some personal pride. It's the next 40 minutes which will determine who goes through automatically through to qualifying 2 and who will have to buy their ticket in the Q1 lottery tomorrow afternoon. As Danny Holgado, a back-to-back Moto 3 winner here, gets a bit of a pre-session pep talk from his close friend and mentor, Paul Espargaro. Paul, of course, here on the Tech 3 KTM in MotoGP, continues to replace the injured Maverick Vinales. Danny Holgado was 11th quickest this morning, and what expected of him this weekend, given his lightweight class record. But a Moto 2 weekend where so much is on the line. 5 title contenders still in the mix. This is the kind of scenario that they could have already done without coming into Moto 2 practice. Lewis Sotheby and Neil Morrison will be following it all with you here in the commentary box and keeping an eye on our 5 title contenders who must have cringed when they saw the rain falling late in Moto 3. They will be relieved, no doubt, to see that the rain has now stopped and the sun is shining.
Absolutely. We're just looking at our commentary box window here on the front straight. Sun is peering through the clouds overhead, and as Lewis said, the shower stopped after a couple of minutes, so it doesn't really look as though the track is in any way wet. I think it will be slick tyres from the start of this session, and yeah, I don't really foresee too much of a delay, which is a great thing, because we want to see these riders on track. We want to see this epic championship Moto 2 fight continuing apace, with Diogo Moreira, Manu Gonzalez locked in horns as they come into this penultimate round of the season. And what a battle it has been over the last couple of races. We saw a couple of duels between the pair in the race in Indonesia, then of course in qualifying last time out in Malaysia. And Manu Gonzalez really needs to muster a response. You would say this is the biggest weekend of his career. And this is a rider that's won a World Championship before in the Supersport 300 class, but Moto 2, a whole different kettle of fish, and stopping the momentum that the Brazilian Moreira has managed to build up over the last 8 races will really take some doing.
Yeah, from memory, that Supersport 300 title that Gonzalez won, he won with relative comfort. He perhaps is in slightly uncharted territory in terms of having to fight for a World Championship in such tense and close circumstances, and in terms of this 2025 season, he's in relatively uncharted territory in that he's chasing the World Championship leader. 20 Grand Prix have been completed this season. Gonzalez has led the World Championship at the end of 16 of them. Only a couple of races earlier in the season when Jake Dixon led the championship, and a single race in the lead of the championship lead, but he certainly does need quite a bit to go wrong for Diogo Moreira and Manu Gonzalez. Deficit, but certainly plenty of evidence this morning that Jake Dixon could at least hold up his end.
Coming back to a track which he knows fairly well. Really looking in this team were saying earlier, if he's Friday morning, then that usually is a good sign for the weekend ahead. So let's hope that that is very much the case.
His Marcos is this morning. We've had official copy on your fans American Racing Team earlier on today that Ramirez will be departing that squad at the end of on screen. Yes, you are. So Ramirez patched his new next season. Doesn't look particularly thrilled with the news, does he? You can understand why that might be. The second half of 2025 for the Andalus. Does look as if he may still find a home in Moto 2 next season. A place that he actually used to call home. Which he previously raced for in that. There are one or two reports that might be his destination for next season, but we certainly know the racing.
He's going to the 16.
It's all about keeping it.
Too, and we've seen that in the last couple of years. Some of the riders of the highest quality taking some time to adapt and bed into this class. You just need to look at David Alonso, 14 victories last year. Still took him took a little bit longer for Colin Veyer, but certainly since the summer break we reconvened, he certainly seemed like a different rider, and yeah, good to see him now a regular fixture inside the top 10 places as we head out. And Lewis and I are probably the happiest people in the paddock to see that we're not going to have an enforced delay because of the weather. The conditions are good enough for everyone to be going out at the start of this session on slick tyres, and it's almost as if that little brief shower which concluded the Moto 3 session rather prematurely, just about 5 or 10 minutes ago. It's almost as if it hasn't happened, which is fantastic news for all concerned.
Yeah, it is looking much brighter now. There are still some threatening clouds if we just look over out of our commentary box window and beyond the main grandstand here. It is still pretty grey. So this might be the kind of session you can see some further ominous clouds there off into the distance on the outside of turn 1. Might be the kind of session where you just want to get a banker in, just get yourself a lap time on the board at the start of the session. You don't want to find the best conditions occurring whilst you're sat in the pits. So with 5 riders in particular, and certainly 2 of those 5 with an awful lot to lose this weekend in the form of Diogo Moreira and Manu Gonzalez. Certainly Gonzalez will be at the very top of the list of riders. Very pleased that that rain stopped when it did.
Yeah, you do feel that Gonzalez just needs a little bit more on track at the moment than Moreira. Everything seems to just be coming quite naturally to the young Brazilian, certainly over the last 8 races. And Gonzalez can no longer be on the defensive and really does have to find a new approach, go on the attack once again. I was having a conversation, it looks like 1 or 2 spots of rain on the camera there, just on the outside of the track in that final sector, but hopefully that is from a little bit earlier. It isn't actually what we're seeing right now. I was having a conversation over the lunch break with a Spanish colleague, and we were sort of hedging our bets on which way we thought the Moto2 Championship race was going to fall. And certainly I was making the point that when you've been on the defensive for the best part of half a season, it is very, very difficult to kind of change that chip in your brain and say, you know what, I'm just going to go all out attacking from here on in. I've seen instances of it in years gone by, and it's never been so easy for the rider to change that mindset this late in the season. So I think Gonzalez does have a big old job on his hands, but thankfully we are at 2 tracks which he counts among his favourites, and he has tested here at the start of the season and was ludicrously fast. I mean, so much faster than the other riders that were testing at this venue. And I think maybe there was a hope that he would come here FP1 and just light it up, and didn't quite come to pass. But yeah, I still think that this should be a good track for the number 18.
Yeah, this is our wild card, Alessandro Morosi, the number 91, on a 3rd Fantic back to Calex. Grand Prix debut for him this weekend for the 20-year-old. But yeah, in terms of trying to draw parallels with other Moto2 Championship battles that we've seen in the past, 2 that sort of come to mind off the top of my head that Gonzalez will be trying to draw inspiration from. 2011 potentially, when Marc Marquez really did chase Stefan Bradl down as the season unfolded, and then ultimately lost the championship late on to Bradl. And 2021 too, when it looked like Raul Fernandez had all the momentum going into the latter part of the season and ended up losing the title to Remy Gardner. I guess what happened on both of those occasions, which Gonzalez can't necessarily count on, is that both of the 2 riders with momentum had key crashes, didn't they, late in those championship campaigns. Marc Marquez had that crash in practice in Sepang, which caused the diplopia to kick in, and he, of course, didn't race again that season. And of course, Raul Fernandez had that huge crash at Misano, where he was on course to take the World Championship lead from Remy Gardner, and ultimately did not regain the ascendancy. Remy Gardner won here and was in a position where he could just cruise around in the final race of the season. So certainly the momentum counts for a lot, but it's not a guarantee that you're going to close the championship out from here.
Yeah, and even the best, the very, very best, are affected by some kinds of nerves. We've seen that at the very highest level in MotoGP in years gone by. So for a rider that's fighting for the World Championship for the first time, like Diogo Moreira, it's only natural if he goes into Valencia with a 5 or a 10-point lead that nerves are going to be playing there as well. And well, we've had a bit of a stunning start to this session already. We go on board with Jake Dixon, and he's already set a 41.4, which is another new lap record in the Moto2 class around this Portuguese circuit.
Oh, he's pushing through turn 4, isn't he, on the 96 Boscascuro. So whatever I guess the questions we posed pre-session of how much of an impact that late Moto3 practice rain was having, and whether there was still any rain early in this session, I think we've had our answer from Jake Dixon. Kinet has also began this session in the same vein of form he showed this morning. Kinet's found a 41.5, which is just under a tenth slower than he went earlier on today. We've also seen laps in the 41s from Ifan Kvara 3rd and Barry Baltus in 4th place. Earlier on today, we had no fewer than 13 riders in the 141s, all the way down to Ivan Artola in 13th place in the 141.989. So we would expect mid to low 140s as we go through this session. And Aaron Canet, fresh from losing his all-time lap record, looks like he's in the process of taking it back again.
Yeah, Canet was consistently fast this morning. As we have a look at David Alonso, he was losing a whole lot of ground in this final sector throughout this morning. You can see there just having a bit of a bobble. The front suspension doing a whole lot of work through that final turn. Alonso comes across the line, jumps up into 6th, just a place behind Danny Holgado, his teammate. As Dixon has another go, you can see he's right within the range through sector 3, just misses out, but Canet goes faster still, a 41.2. The lap record has been lowered again.
Canet now a couple of tenths clear of Dixon. The top 2 from this morning, the top 2 as it stands this afternoon as well. The 2 outsiders in this 5-way fight for the World Championship. Canet is 5th in the World Championship, 43 points back. Dixon is 4th, 41 points off the World Championship lead, and each of them know coming into this weekend they have to finish on the podium if they're to keep themselves in the World Championship mix. Canet needs to be top 2 minimum and then hope that Moreira and Gonzalez have some problems. Dixon needs to be at the very least 3rd and hope for some issues up ahead in terms of the World Championship to keep himself in contention and going to Valencia in a week's time.
Yeah, mathematically, but realistically, both riders know they need to win here this weekend, absolutely, if they want to have any kind of realistic shot going into Valencia next weekend with a realistic chance of having a shot at the championship. And Canet very nearly ruled himself out of having that chance with a massive moment there. Very, very fortunate to walk and ride away from that. In fact, the number 44, well, he has been spectacular. He's been riding super aggressively from the first laps that we saw this morning, but never more so than this moment right here.
Isn't it just Aaron Canet in a nutshell? The rear was coming round there on the 44. Craig Jones corner taken at 200 kilometers an hour, 125 miles an hour in 3rd gear. And Aaron Canet, who's now shaking his head, I think at some traffic up ahead, a little wave of the finger there to somebody, either that or he's just seen the replay on the screens and he's saying, no, I stayed on the bike, it's all under control, don't worry.
Yeah, might have been said to himself, I don't believe that I just managed to do that. But stay on the bike he did. Aaron Canet's heart rate will have spiked up 15 or 20 BPM after that moment, you have to say. And he has saved his frantic technicians a long old time rebuilding the bike, because you crashed there, as you said, Lewis, well over 100 miles an hour through the Craig Jones corner, turn 9 left-hander. And although there's a lot of asphalt on the edge of that turn, you still are going to be falling at a very, very high speed. One of the more frightening points on this circuit, probably on the entire calendar actually, where you could possibly go down. So thankful that Canet managed to avoid that. Still, he remains in top spot in this session.
Progress check on our title chasers then. Canet currently fastest, Dixon 2nd, Manuel Gonzalez, albeit half a second off the pace of Canet, is up in 4th. Barry Baltus currently sits 8th, and championship leader Diogo Moreira currently only, and I stress only, P12 on a 142.141, and that might become 13th in a second as Alonso Lopez, who you might recall crashed out of the lead of this race here last year. He now takes that 12th place from Moreira, so the points leader now down to 13th place. Yeah, Lopez, of course, last time we came here in Portimao, an awful lot has changed in the life of Alonso Lopez from a Moto 2 persuasion. Arrived here as the World Championship leader, having won the first race in Qatar, led this race, was on course for 2 in Zado 2, when he crashed out of the lead, and we've seen precious little of him at the front of a Moto 2 race since.
5 races on the bounce now that Lopez has not finished inside the top 10. Overall, it has been a pretty miserable year, hasn't it, for the number 21, his 4th year in the Moto 2 category. And yeah, he's just not built on the successes of last year really at all. I mean, he was kind of on the outskirts of the championship fight up until the final couple of races last year. You never really got the impression that he had the proper initiative in the championship fight at any point, but he was still there or thereabouts. And to see him so far off this year, and we're talking about I think just 3 finishes where he's been higher than 10th place. Sorry, 4 finishes where he's been higher than 10th. Yeah, I know he missed a good chunk of pre-season, but you never really felt that he's got going in 2025. And at this point, he's probably just counting down the days until he's able to jump from the speed up the Speed RS Boscoscuro team and chassis across to Grassini, and a Calex machine which he will ride next year.
Just up ahead of Moreira there is the 85 of Javi Zurutusa. It's worth just reminding, if you weren't with us this morning, of the replacements we have this weekend. Zurutusa, one of them there on the 85, in for Joe Roberts, whose season has come to an early end, unfortunately, after he cracked his left wrist in Malaysia a fortnight ago. Also without Darren Binder for the last couple of races of the season at the Grassini squad. His place is being taken by Sergio Garcia, who's going to be a regular at that team next season anyway, so if there was going to be a replacement, it made total sense for it to be Sergio Garcia. Binder still really suffering as a result of the injury that he sustained, the broken forearm that he suffered back at the French Grand Prix, that FP1 crash with Zonta van den Gorberg. And of course, we still await the return of Denny Sun Chu to Moto 2. He remains on the injured list, with Danny Munoz taking his place. Munoz at the moment in this session is down in 22nd, but Unchu, who of course we last saw race way back in the early summer, could potentially be going a good 9 months before racing in Moto 2 again. Unlikely that we'll see him now until the first race of next season.
Yeah, which would be massively disappointing for the young Turkish rider. Obviously, new opportunities, a new venture for him next year as he jumps across to Mark VDS and a Boscoscuro frame. I'd say at this stage, it's probably more important for him to get some laps on that new bike in pre-season testing in November than it would be to race at Valencia per se and have a bit of a farewell in the IO squad. As we look at Gonzalez just sneaking under Danny Holgado there as they head down the hill. Just looking at some of the lap times coming in. Riders now settling into a bit of a longer run. It does seem that the faster names that we're seeing, the likes of Gonzalez, even Colin Veyer, Jake Dixon, down in the low 42s, I think we could say, with the exception perhaps of Aaron Canet, who is out there doing 141.8, 141.9. So Canet maybe has a little bit of an advantage after what, 5, 6, 7 laps.
Yeah, it does give us a window into how everyone's feeling in this session. Tomorrow morning's FP2 session will also really shine a light on who's looking strong and who perhaps has to step their game up. Another 142.1 for Manu Gonzalez. 1.8. He's at the back of this trio with Holgado next behind Gonzalez. We saw Gonzalez ducking underneath of him to turn 11 on the previous lap. He betted on that lap, but clearly he must have exceeded some track limits in the process of doing so, because it wasn't registered as his best lap time of the afternoon. Here's Philip Salach, who currently sits in 15th place. And 1 place behind the World Championship leader, Diogo Moreira. And of course, our focus and our analysis of everything that the World Championship contenders do is just heightened by the stakes here this weekend, with the World Championship on the line. 14th place, but I guess the evidence of Moto 2 this season is that
Diogo Moreira, he's shown enough times that he's able to come back from a relatively perilous position at this point in the weekend and still make it work, still put in a very strong performance on Sunday as Baltus and Agius come across the line also in the low 1:42. So I mean, it does seem as though there's 9 or 10 riders that are doing a very, very similar pace here at the moment, Lewis. Very difficult to point to anyone and say, well, they have a big old advantage. Doesn't seem to be the case. There's probably, yeah, as I said, 7 or 8 names that seem to be able to reel off laps in the low 1:42s after 7 or 8 laps.
Yeah, Aegis, his last lap was also a 42.2, like Baltus. Manu Gonzalez last lap over the line was a 1:42.2. Canet has just done another 1:41.8. Dixon, who's with Canet on the racetrack, has just done a 42.3. So I think it's fair to say at this stage of the running, we are still very early. We're not even halfway through practice yet, with 25 minutes of this Moto 2 practice session to go and 14 Q2 places to be locked in terms of absolute pace and general rhythm and consistency. The standout rider at the moment, not something we've said at all really in 2025 to this point, is Aaron Canet.
Yeah, on a Friday. I'm thinking back to Austria, maybe the only time we've done it so far in 2025, which for the pre-season favourite after 21 races really is a great surprise. But better late than never, I guess. And Kinet, true to form at this circuit. We did mention this morning that Kinet has a stellar record here in years gone by. Took his first ever Moto2 victory here 1 year ago. Pushed Pedro Acosta pretty hard for, I would say, 20 out of the 22 laps that we had in 2023. So he definitely does have some renown at this venue, does Kinet.
Perhaps I'm being slightly mischievous, but there's a scenario in my head. I do wonder what Bobby Locatelli and the Fanti team might do. What happens if we've got a scenario on Sunday where Aaron Kinet's leading and Barry Baltus is second? And Baltus needs the points to stay in World Championship contention. What on earth would Fantic do in that scenario? Sure, that's not how Baltus would want to take a first Moto2 victory, but he is their leading championship contender with 2 races to go. Of course, Fantic, the only team who have 2 horses in this particular race, 3rd and 5th in the World Championship. Baltus 8 points ahead of Aaron Kinet, but at this stage of the World Championship, 8 points is a lot.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, the likelihood of Kinet winning the championship at this moment is minute. I mean, Baltus, you're not really going to be putting money on it, but it's more likely, I think, than Kinet, especially when you look at their recent form as well. But as I mentioned, this has been a great track for Kinet in years gone by. I think back to his record at Valencia as well. That's his home circuit. Tegi, where he was nowhere all race weekend long, and last time out in Malaysia as well. He really sank without trace after a really sub-optimal start.
Yeah, he's well, we said earlier on in the season with Kinet, he was playing the sort of stealthy, consistent game in Moto2, which is not really Aaron Kinet's way. He tends to produce explosive, outright pace rather than the kind of monotonous consistency that we saw from earlier on in the season. He's much more of a streaky Moto2 rider, I guess, by nature. Scored points in each of the first 10 Grand Prix. And his point scoring streak was ended with that first corner crash at the Czech Grand Prix at Brno. And from that point on, we've only seen him on the podium once, and even on that day, he didn't stand on the podium. He was promoted into it by the disqualification for Manu Gonzalez.
Yeah, and just a bit of an update on some of the lap times that the riders are doing currently, particularly the top 2 riders in this championship. Diogo Moreira, last lap he did a 1:43.7. Manu Gonzalez, by contrast, did a 42.0. So Moreira has been following Senna Agius over the last couple of laps, and it looks as though Agius has just been putting seconds into him as they go around on track. Senna Agius also doing laps in the 1:42.2s, or sorry, 1:42.1s after 10 laps of this session. So you would say the 2 intact GP bikes, as it stands, are looking in pretty good nick.
And that's what Gonzalez needs, doesn't he, this weekend, and next weekend, really. He needs, ideally, to put riders between himself and Diogo Moreira to really boost his championship campaign. That said, it is still in Manu Gonzalez's hands with 2 Grand Prix to go. As mentioned this morning, if Gonzalez wins the final 2 races of the season here on Sunday, the Grand Prix that gets underway at just after 11 AM, 11:15 local time, we get underway with Moto. It flipped a little bit this weekend as Senna Agius goes up into 4th place. Moto2 gets us underway on Sunday morning, as I say, just after 11 o'clock in the morning. MotoGP is second in the order, 1 PM local time. Moto3 then completes our running 2:30 after the MotoGP race on Sunday afternoon. It's a big weekend, of course, all Grand Prix classes, isn't it, really? Of course, the finale of the Moto E World Championship this weekend, with 7 riders still mathematically in contention. 6 Italians, I believe it is, and Eric Granado, who are fighting for the championship. So we could have not 1, but 2 Brazilians celebrating world title success this.
Obviously, we're heading back there next year for the first time in a long time. And we go back to Goiânia, the first time since the late 80s, I believe, when we last had Premier Class racing there. And just when you were talking there, Senna Agius did jump up into 4th position with a 1:41.7. That was on the 11th lap of an 11-lap run so far. So the Australian looks as though he's able to only get faster as his tyres become a little more worn, which certainly bodes well for Sunday. I did catch up with Intact GP team manager Jürgen Ling just after FP1, and I was asking him about Manu Gonzalez, and he was saying he's obviously very cool and very down to earth. Normally likes to have a bit of a laugh in the box and is usually cracking jokes and making sure that members on his side of the garage are always smiling, having a good time. But he said the last 2 or 3 GPs, especially in Sepang, he noticed that the mood was just very, very serious. There was no joking, there was no laughing. He felt from that maybe a little indication that the pressure was on him. We know obviously that it certainly was with Moreira honing into view in the championship, but he said this weekend it looks as though Manu is just relaxed a little bit again, and yeah, cracking some jokes, which he takes as a sign that yeah, he's in the proper zone.
Gonzalez is now in the 41s. He's done a 41.9 on his last lap. Here he comes into picture. Weird run this from Moreira. He's just done a 42.6 out of nowhere. He's been doing 43s for much of the session. We've said in previous weekends, haven't we? It appears, certainly from the outside, as if Moreira sort of rides within himself on Fridays until it comes to the crucial crunch point of the last 10 minutes when he needs to put a big lap time on the board. And when he needs to do that, he does. But it's very, very difficult, as it often is, to really read how Diogo Moreira is feeling out there on the track. His lap times are all over the place at the moment. This lap already, he's the best part of a second off as he gets out of the way of his teammate Adrian Huertas. So we can't read too much into this lap for the number 10 either. I guess he's a rider who will say, it doesn't matter about my method, it doesn't matter how I go about it, just look at the results. They speak for themselves. And if you look through the 2025 season, yes, Manu Gonzalez has the most wins, 4 of them. Moreira has 3. Gonzalez 9 podiums to Diogo Moreira's 8. But Diogo Moreira certainly has the form and the momentum in the second half of this season, which has seen him take the World Championship lead. He's, I believe he's now 12-8 up on Manu Gonzalez in pure race results for this 2025 season.
Yeah, 7 of the last 8 outings, Moreira has managed to outscore Gonzalez, and in every race bar top 5. This kind of crazy run where he's been on the podium every single week, but he's been there or thereabouts. He's been uber consistent inside that top 5, with the exception of that really troubled weekend that he had in Barcelona. But otherwise, Moreira has been a regular fixture at the front of Moto 2, and with such a varied year up at the front, with so many different riders on the podium, 16 different riders ascending the Moto 2 podium this year, 10 of them winning a race. I think the most you can maybe expect is for riders to be inside the top 5 as often as possible, maybe not necessarily always on the podium, because the depth of talent on the grid this year is so deep.
This is a good look at Moreira. I think that's out of turn 5. He's exiting there with the replacement, the XZ on the helmet of Xabi Zurutuza, up behind him. Zurutuza, who is a regular in the European Moto 2 Championship, which has proven quite a successful route into the Moto 2 World Championship as of late. Fermin Aldeguer has demonstrated that. Alonso Lopez has also demonstrated that too. Senna Regis is another one, of course, who's a former European Moto 2 champion. All sorts of different avenues into the Moto 2 World Championship. We still have such a close and competitive field, as Neil mentioned. So many different podium finishes this season, 16 in total, 10 different winners, which is in itself a Moto 2 record. And outside the top 2 in this session, we've got Albert Arenas third on a 141.658. Moreira back in 14th. There's only half a second adrift of that. In fact, Philip Salach is near enough on the same time as Moreira too. It shows you, if you are ever so slightly off your game, if you perhaps make a mess of your last lap by only so much as missing one apex, outbraking yourself by a couple of meters, the potential punishment doesn't really fit the crime in Moto 2 because the field is so close.
Yeah, we're talking about the field being so close. Look at Barry Baltus's lap times there, and okay, there were some mid 1 minute 42s. There are also quite a few low 1 minute 42s in that race he just did there. The Belgian rider has been so impressive of late. On the podium again in Malaysia after qualifying on the front row. Well, this was really interesting after the race, actually. He was talking about how difficult it was to manage the front tyre pressure in the racing conditions in Malaysia in the heat. And obviously it's something that we hear quite a lot MotoGP riders saying, is the flag that indicates there is some rain falling out there is shown, which is why we pretty much have everyone coming in to pit lane at the moment.
We've got 4 riders who are on outlaps at the moment. Ramirez, Adji, Zolotuza and Cooney, who just got out. These could be key moments, this, with 40 minutes in the session to go. Diogo Moreira is just in at the moment in 14th place, 17,000% clear of Philip Salach, who is just outside the Q2 spots. As we now look at a Diogo Moreira long run, which is so up and down, isn't it? Up and down as the charts behind him on the telemetry screens. But at the moment, he's clinging on to a place in Q2 as the rain looks like it's falling its heaviest there at the far end of the circuit, up at the Craig Jones corner of turn 9 and the Portimao curve of turn 10.
Yeah, we've seen in previous years that the showers here at this Algarve International Circuit can be very localized, can only be falling maybe on 1 or 2 corners. But we're just seeing outside of our commentary box window that a few spots of rain on the window. So it wasn't just up in that other part of the circuit which we just saw Jake Dixon negotiating.
Yeah, we had a little bit of drizzle during the lunch break too. It's not particularly heavy rain, but it's just that fine sort of mist that begins to fall as Jake Dixon also now makes his way up pit lane. Doesn't fancy a piece of that, particularly when he's sitting up in 2nd place. It's exactly the kind of rain that when it hits you on your visor, you're not too keen to throw one of these bikes on their side and take the ultimate risk in a session such as this, when you're not entirely sure just how grippy the tarmac is underneath you. So going to Q2 at the moment are those 14 names on your screen at the moment. Missing out as it stands, Salach 15th, Adji 16th, Ivan Ortola is in 17th, teammate to this man Eric Fernandez. Huertas, who did go out there and set a personal best on a 42.2, wasn't enough. Good job it wasn't from an Italtrans point of view, because he would have knocked his teammate out. Huertas currently 18th, Sasaki Escrige, Munoz Navarro, Van den Goldberg, Garcia, Ramirez, who did go out shortly before the rain fell, trying to get a lap time in before the track got too wet. He's 25th from Fernandez, Zolotuza, Cooney and the wildcard Morosi. So as it stands, all of the World Championship contenders have been able to dodge the potential pitfalls that would have come from that shower.
Yeah, now we just have to understand, is it going to be another very brief localized shower like we saw towards the end of Moto3 practice, or is it here for the long haul? It looks as though it's just a bit of a brief one from what we can see at the moment. No more signs of rain on the window in our commentary box, which is definitely a good sign. Hopefully we can see Moto2 bikes heading back out towards the end of this session. And hopefully that is good news as well for MotoGP practice, which is coming up in about 15 minutes time.
Limit, Jake Dixon said there. We're in a luxurious position here in the commentary box, is that we're pretty much right next door to the podium on the main straight here, and the rain does appear to have stopped now outside our commentary box, so we might not have seen the last of the fast lap times in this practice session yet, which will certainly impact Diogo Moreira's situation. We've seen happier riders, haven't we? Currently sitting 2nd in a session. Perhaps goes to show how much quicker Jake Dixon could go if he had a bike that he was comfortable with. Currently, the only rider within 0.4 of a second of Aaron Canet.
Yeah, I think Jake maybe just a little bit frustrated that his rhythm isn't quite as strong and as consistent as his speed has been today. And when he's trying to run the pace of some of the faster Calyx names, he is doing it absolutely on the limit. We saw that at Phillip Island when he felt he had one of the best races of his entire Moto2 career, but could only end up finishing in 5th position. Really stung that he wasn't able to basically come home and get a podium despite his best efforts. I do feel that Dixon is riding at the top level of the likes of Moreira at the moment, but maybe just doesn't quite have the package underneath him to be able to have the results to be a little closer in that championship fight. And Moreira will be slightly relieved to see that there are some fans from back home here in support of him. Manu Gonzalez certainly seems to be expecting to be heading back out soon.
I guess the precarious nature of where Moreira is at the moment, 14th and currently the last rider through to Q2, means that if someone else outside the top 14 goes out there, Moreira's kind of got to do the same and make sure that he's in a position to respond to that if someone does improve in the final 8 minutes. Moreira can't afford to be caught sat on his chair with his baseball cap on in the box. He's got to be out there making sure that he's putting lap times in when the others are. So there is still a little bit of risk for Moreira at this stage. If you're Canet, Dixon or even Gonzalez up in 4th, you perhaps have the luxury a little bit of being able to just wait and see how everybody else fares and then respond to that. Van den Gorberg does go out immediately on track. Following him out there is the former World Championship leader, Manu Gonzalez, who perhaps isn't in a position where he needs to take risks, but he's clearly happy enough with the current conditions and the rain having stopped to go out there and push.
Zonta and Manu are fairly good friends there. You can see just on the screens of our cameras down at turn 3 that maybe there's a little bit of rain there, but it looks dry enough. Understandable that Manu is taking his time and being ever so careful there. Moreira looks as though he's going to follow suit.
Just dragging his foot across the tarmac there, wasn't he, Gonzalez, on the way into turn 3. Just trying to feel just how much moisture is on the track surface underneath him. Occasionally you see some riders actually put their hand down when they're at lean angle through corners just to try and see how much water comes up on the palm of their hand, on their gloves as they leave the corner. That's Jorge Navarro, who does have a podium finish to his name around this Portimao circuit in that rain-affected 2022 Grand Prix when he finished up in 3rd place. Of course, made Q2 last time out in Malaysia too, did Navarro. First time this season where we've seen both forward riders through to qualifying too. At the moment, neither of them are going to advance automatically this time. Alex Escritch is 20th on a 42.3. And Jorge Navarro is 22nd, a couple of tenths behind.
So Gonzalez and Van den Gorberg then still continue to go around. Aaron Canet doesn't look as though he's too interested in heading out in the immediate future. Certainly the speeds that both Gonzalez and Van den Gorberg are doing doesn't indicate that we're going to be seeing a new lap record in these final 6 minutes, but for all intents and purposes it looks fairly dry out there, doesn't it, Lewis?
Yeah, no spots of rain landing on the visor or on the screen of Gonzalez. Let's see how this lap unfolds then. We're riding on board with Gonzalez and now plunging downhill towards turn 1, braking from around about 280 kilometers an hour on these Moto 2 bikes, down 3 gears into turn 1, and immediately Manu Gonzalez skates off the road into the first corner and lets Zonta van den Gorberg move through. So potentially a little bit of reduced grip at the end of the main straight into turn 1.
Even if it's just minuscule lack of grip, there's absolutely no point in risking anything, is there, whenever he currently sits pretty in 4th position in this session with his chief protagonist all the way down in 14th. But
what do you do if you're a team manager of, say, Diogo Moreira here in 14th place? You've kind of got to send him out there, haven't you?
Yeah.
You don't want to have to take a risk in a situation like this, but as much as it wouldn't be the end of his weekend if he's in qualifying 1, we have seen riders go through Q1 and take pole already this season. Canet's done it already at Silverstone earlier in the year, but you're not going to know if the conditions are good enough until you go out there. And of course, there's plenty of time, 5 minutes yet, for those conditions still to change. Yellow flags are out in the first sector. They've been brought out by Xabi Zurutuza, who's gone down. Is that in the first corner? You can see the damage to his leathers. It's coming through turn 3 here, so it's a slower crash for Zurutuza, and that was straight up and down. That was, just to, I guess, use the cliche, it looked like a wet weather crash, didn't it?
Yeah, most certainly did. And we did see Zonta and Manu Gonzalez being very, very careful through turn number 3. And I guess that is why, because conditions are fairly precarious. You asked me what I would do if I was Moreira's team manager. I think you just got to be out there on track, to be in a position that if conditions improve in the next 3 or 4 minutes, that you're there to take advantage of it on that final flying lap, because basically you're just going to get faster as this session progresses, the conditions as they are. So maybe put a couple of out laps in where you're not pushing to the absolute limits, and then if there is a chance on your final lap in the final seconds, then yeah, really put your head down. But as it stands, it doesn't really look as though the track is in the condition to do that.
Of course, you need the temperature in your tyres really to be able to fully exploit what's going on out there. Gonzalez already a second off through the first sector. He looked like he was pushing a little more through that first split on this lap, but already dropping a second to Aaron Canet in the first sector. So at the moment we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 riders out on the racetrack. Gonzalez, Ramirez has just joined them, along with Saki, Alonso, Van den Gorberg. Zutter was out on track. He's now, of course, on the side of the track at turn 3, having crashed. There's a little bit of a moment there coming through 8 for Manu Gonzalez, and is that just the final warning that he needs to come in and park his bike?
Yeah, quite possibly. So that's the second scare that we've had for Manu Gonzalez down at turn 1. Looked as though he wasn't fancying it, and then turn 8 also slightly precarious. The good news is that everything should be okay. What, maybe 5-10 minutes into the MotoGP practice session, which is coming up just after this. Lewis Sutterby will be sticking around, Matt Burt and Jack Appleyard will also be joining the broadcast to bring you the latest from the Premier class, but can't see there being a great deal of change in the current order to your left.
Fair play to Alonso though, he's pushing enough here. He's only half a second down, and he's coming into the final sector. That's just, I think, sent a few extra riders out there on the racetrack and thinking we might just want to be out there to cover this one off in the final 2.5 minutes, because this lap time from Alonso could be in the 141s and won't be a million miles away from the best lap he's done so far today. So could this be about to change our perspective? Alonso said after the Malaysian Grand Prix, when he had a few moments, he said, this gives me further confidence, because if I'm able to push through them, it means I've got more control over my bike. A 141.992 from David Alonso is by no means slow. I think a few riders will have seen that and thought, I better get out there.
Yeah, so Alonso showing that if you put the head down and are willing to take a bit of a risk, the lap time could be there, and Herrera is getting in on the game. He does have to be very careful. There is a yellow flag out at turn 1. Is that David Alonso?
It is Alonso, yeah. So he was pushing, and in the end he took one risk too many, and that might just bring in, look at the damage to his bike at turn 2, where we saw Paul Espargaro go down earlier on today. It's now saying turn 3 on our track map, but I think he's gone down in 2. 1 completed. This is now turn 2, and I think the bike's going to end up at 3, is it? As he now goes wide. Yeah, it didn't even make it as far as turn 3. Exit of 2 onto the curb. Perhaps a little bit of moisture hanging around in those curves. Bike into the air fence too. And as much as Alonso's initial lap would have shown the field that there is some pace out there, he's also shown them just how precarious the risking is in this situation. You really do have to push, and he pushed too hard.
That is a nasty roll through the gravel there for the reigning Moto3 champion. Looked like a fairly simple crash, but you realise just how fast he was going when he hit that gravel. Thankfully up on his feet, and looks as though he's communicating with the marshals. And that is certainly food for thought for any other rider that is going out there. The lap time is there potentially if you're willing to risk it, but there is a considerable risk, especially down in that first sector around turns 2 and 3. The track is quite precarious.
So this is the last flying lap for Manu Gonzalez. Canet just exiting the pit lane there. Yellow's out in sector 1 again. Is it in the same part of the racetrack? Well, we can see someone running there on the outside of turn 3. Is there anyone down in the foreground? Answer is no. We just saw the green light panel flashing there at the top of the screens. Danny Holgado, we're being told, has also crashed, which would mean 2 crashes in 2 minutes for the Aspar duo, and has he made the same mistake?
Yeah, well, you have to admire the likes of Alonso for pushing out there in these final minutes, and it looks as though the exact same mistake, not the same crash, because his front didn't go away immediately. And Holgado has a real almost tank slapper as he goes into turn number 3 there. Bike getting out of control, but go wide onto those curbs at your peril. Oh, goodness me, that is an ugly crash.
Worse, wasn't it? The fact that he did manage to catch the initial slide and then got hit by the bike. So they're now swapping notes down on the outside of turn 3 at Aspar. Their rookie pairing both down, which has at least brought a smile to Jorge Martinez Aspar's face.
At least they're able to laugh about it. I think inside he's thinking, lads, you're, what, 6th and 7th in this session with nothing really to gain from trying to go super fast at the end of this session. You're not in risk at all. So why are you adding, what, a couple of tens of thousands of euros in repair damage to our end of season bill?
Yeah, thanks, boys. You've just cancelled our evening meal down in our hospitality. So Alonso and Holgado are both through, but both on the floor with two very second-hand motorcycles for the two who are the two remaining contenders for Rookie of the Year in Moto 2. Holgado only needs a top 7 finish this weekend to truly seal that one, which he's had control of for most of the season.
Yeah, just looking down the timing screens, Lewis, it doesn't look as though anyone is putting the lap time in that could trouble Diogo Moreira and push him outside the top 14. And to his great credit, he is putting it all on the line himself. As you can see, personal best sector through sector number 3. And giving it full commitment as he comes round through turn 14, Sagres, and then into 15. The Hertz turn as he guns it out and up over this fabulous elevation change up across the finish line. And Moreira does gain 2 positions, so impressive stuff in the end there for the Brazilian.
Yeah, given that ultimately he didn't need to do that lap, he couldn't afford to play too many games and take that risk. He had to be out there just in case someone did improve. In the end, the only rider that improved was Diogo Moreira himself. So P12 for him, and he joins his 4 other title contenders in qualifying 2. And it is 2 out of 2 for Aaron Canet. An all-time lap record this morning of 1:41.460, bettered by a quarter of a second exactly this afternoon. The story of the day here in Portimao Moto 2, it's Canet versus Dixon.
Yeah, certainly in a straight-out time attack, those 2 riders have been a bit of a step ahead off the rest. Albert Reinas in 3rd, 4 tenths back. Canet not looking overly happy there as he came back into the box, and Dixon was just saying there with tyre life, I think will be really good. So while he wasn't completely comfortable when he was turning in towards the turn, saying he was very on the limit, the apex off the corner, did feel that the bike was potentially managing his tyre as well. So looked pretty relaxed there, didn't he, Jake Dixon? Didn't feel the need to go out at the end of this session and chance these kind of iffy conditions. So you would say a decent day at the office for the number 96.
Well, time is beginning to tick away now on Albert Arenas' Moto 2 career. Just this and next weekend in Valencia to go, but showing once again he's still got places to offer as a Moto 2 rider. 3rd quickest for him on the 1:41.658. And while the Aspar duo have produced copycat crashes, the Intact duo have produced copycat lap times. Both Manu Gonzalez and Senna Agius, 4th and 5th on a 1:41.751. And again, if we are looking for those very minute psychological points to be scored, I guess Manu Gonzalez emerges from this afternoon with perhaps slightly better pace than Diogo Moreira, but Moreira has done the crucial part of the job. He is through to Q2.
Yeah. I mean, from what we could see in this session, much better pace, but we know that that doesn't always translate into a Saturday. Moreira, though, did get the job done. 12th place for him. Nothing spectacular, but it rarely is on a Friday.
Very intriguingly poised, isn't it, ahead of tomorrow in this Moto 2 title battle. Aaron Canet and Jake Dixon, who are the 2 outsiders in this 5-way fight, were quickest today from Albert Arenas and Manu Gonzalez. Senna Agius 5th ahead of Danny Holgado and David Alonso, who crashed within seconds of each other late in the session. Ethan Guevara's through in 8th ahead of Barry Baltus, himself a title contender. Via, Vietti and Moreira 12th, who improved late on. Tony Arbolino and Alonso Lopez, the other 2 riders, automatically through to qualifying 2. So it's certainly Aaron Canet's Friday at the Algarve International Circuit. An all-time lap record sees him edge out Jake Dixon. All 5 title contenders are through to Q2. MotoGP practice is on the way next.
The breathtaking Algarve International Circuit in Portugal is all geared up to host the penultimate round of MotoGP's historic season. From Southeast Asia to Southwest Portugal, MotoGP's 21st chapter in 2025 provides one of the season's most spectacular and toughest challenges at Portimao's high-speed playground. With rain in the air, Q2 places are at stake next live. It's time for MotoGP. 4.6 kilometres in length, 2.85 miles, 15 corners, 6 of them left, 9 of them right. A start-finish straight measuring 970 metres in length. What a circuit, what a layout. So many jaw-dropping sections, including that plunge down the hill into the hard braking zone for turn 1. You start climbing back up the hill then through turn 4, more undulation down into turn 5. And then Jack Miller's favourite section of Portimao down the hill into turn 8, where he was getting some airtime this morning. Turns 14 and 15, the long right-handers to complete the lap here at the Algarve International Circuit. Good afternoon and welcome back to round 21 of this year's MotoGP World Championship. We are well and truly hitting the final stretch, aren't we, of this longest season in Grand Prix history. This round 21 of 22. The season finale, of course, coming up next weekend at the Ricardo Tormo circuit in Valencia. It's pretty breezy out there as we get set for this crucial 60-minute practice session in MotoGP. And there is definitely, as we said in the introduction, rain in the air. Light rain spots brought a brief disruption to the earlier Moto 3 and Moto 2 sessions. And with crucial Q2 places up for grabs for the Premier Class riders, well, what do the skies hold in store for us over the next hour or so? At the moment, it looks like some of the cloud, as you can see up into the distance there, is just trying to break up. I can see a little bit of a glimmer of some blue skies, which is most welcome. Thank you very much, as the Portuguese fans get set to say farewell to one of their own, the home crowd hero, Miguel Oliveira. But this morning in our opening 45-minute FP1 session, which did see a brief spell of rain, it was dominated by Alex Marquez on the Gresini Racing Ducati. He led home Bezzecchi and Miller, Zarco, Espargaro, despite an early fall at turn 2, picked himself up to finish inside the top 5. Morbidelli, Marini, Mir, Acosta and Aldeguer, they were your top 10 this morning. Just missing out with the two Fabios, Quartararo and the Gian Antonio. Further down, Ayagura. What a debut in MotoGP for Nicolo Bulega, standing in for absent world champion Marc Marquez. Bulega, 14th fastest, 3 places ahead of his standing teammate, or his current teammate, Pecco Bagnaia, of course. Other big names behind Bulega: Binder, Rins, Enea Bastianini, last year's Portuguese Grand Prix winner, the home crowd favourite Oliveira, Somchiat Chantra and Lorenzo Savadori rounding out the 22-strong field. Just a little bit of breaking news to bring you as well, just ahead of the start of this session. If you joined us this morning, which I'm sure you did do, Ralph Hernandez, Australian Grand Prix winner for Trackhouse Aprilia, he suffered a real heavy crash in this morning's FP1 session. He has been through thorough medical examinations at the track and the local hospital. He is planning to start this afternoon session, where his condition will be monitored throughout. That is breaking news released by the Trackhouse MotoGP team. Matt Burt-Lewis will be talking you through all of this afternoon's action with Jack Appleyard down in pit lane, and we will swing straight down to Jack, who's got the bang up to date latest on Ralph Hernandez after his crash this morning with the boss, Davide Brivio.
Yeah, we just stood in front of both of Raul's bikes with him in the back of the box chatting with Noe Herrera. We can see a little bit of strapping under the chin, clearly a couple of stitches there after the impact this morning. Davide, how is he?
Yeah, he's okay. I mean, we went to the hospital for scan and whatever, but it's all negative. It's they say it's a trauma to the right humerus, and so then in agreement also with the medical team, he will go out and we do few laps. Dr. Charter is here in the garage, and he will assess the situation, monitor the situation. Then we decided how to go forward.
So it's the right sort of upper arm, the right shoulder, which took the brunt of the impact. Yeah,
it's the right shoulder probably. He went out and came in back again, but all the exams or whatever they don't show anything. So it's all negative. So we try, we go, and I think also it's good for the rider after a crash to go back in the bike and move on.
Absolutely. Thanks for the latest. We'll stay down here and hopefully he's all okay.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jack. Thanks to Trackhouse boss Davide Brivio for talking to us. This is the reason why then Raul Fernandez is facing a pretty tough remaining 2.5 days of this Portuguese Grand Prix. That really did shake him up. You can see there he's got a plaster, a bit of a scrape and a bump on his chin as he went tumbling through the gravel trap. It sounded like there was almost like a partial dislocation of that right shoulder, some concerns about damage to his right humerus. They are live pictures, by the way, inside the Trackhouse garage. So as you can see, he is suited and booted and ready to at least start this 60-minute session.
I wouldn't expect him to be smiling and jumping off the rooftops after what happened to him this morning, but he didn't look great at all there, I have to say. Did Raul Fernandez. Will follow his progress very closely through this session. Let's take a look at Joan Mir. Well, we're used to seeing Jack Miller producing the pyrotechnics and the aerobatics over turn 8, but Joan Mir, the 2020 World Champion, showing that he's not too bad at it either.
Anything Miller can do, Mir can do better, as he has a little dry smile on his face, talking to his crew chief Santi Hernandez on the exit of turn 8. Yeah, why not have a little bit of a play here in Portimao, have a little bit of fun. Plenty to smile about at the moment if you're Joan Mir and the factory Honda team. 2 podiums on our overseas tour in Japan and in Malaysia, on the brink of potentially losing part of their performance-enhancing concessions, which will spell good news, of course, because it shows what a good job the HRC engineers have been doing behind the scenes. Well, come on, Jack. Joan Mir has thrown down the gauntlet. Can you beat that? Of course, it is Jack Miller Airways, which we so often see. Traditions die hard here, don't they, in Portimao? I'm sure Jack's going to be having another crack at getting some serious airtime as he crests over turn 8. It was a very strong FP1 this morning for Mir. Third fastest with a 139.378. He did go out towards the end of the session on a fresh medium front and medium rim Michelin tyre, but still had to do the lap time, and he did so. And potentially one of the star performers of this morning's opening 45-minute session. Well, clearly the rider on screens, Nicolo Bulega, a double runner-up in the last 2 years in the World Superbike Championship, the only rider that's really posed any kind of threat to Toprak Razgatlioglu. 14th fastest, not even a second behind Alex Marquez. As we mentioned, Lewis, Binder, Rins, Bagnaia, Fernandez, Bastianini, Oliveira, all behind him on the timesheet. Absolutely top job.
If he'd finished there on Sunday afternoon, I would have said what a great job he's done. To be there on Friday morning is exceptional. You can hear the noise in the grandstands for one man. That is for Miguel Oliveira. As you can see, only 7 riders in MotoGP have got more wins than he has in MotoGP. There's a photo of Miguel at the very start of his career on the back of his helmet. Of course, it's not an end of his career here this afternoon, but it's certainly the end of a chapter over the course of the next 10 days. His MotoGP adventure as a full-time rider ending for now, with just the Portuguese Grand Prix here and Valencia to come next weekend. And he's certainly going to be given the ultimate send-off in front of his home fans this weekend in MotoGP. Miguel Oliveira, of course, will be back here next season as part of his BMW World Superbike campaign.
Whether it be Moto 3, whether it be Moto 2, or whether it be MotoGP, Pedro Acosta, as always, been in top form around this Algarve International Circuit. 5 previous starts here in his Grand Prix career across all 3 classes. Podiums in 4, wins in 3. There's a lot of expectation, a lot of eyes on the 21-year-old Spaniard to see if he can be our 8th different winner in this 2025 World Championship campaign. Well, he's had some tough Fridays of late, hasn't he, Pecco Bagnaia? And another one to the books this morning. 17th fastest was the Italian, a 140.306, his best work right at the end of that session. 1.1 seconds he finished behind Alex Marquez. Bagnaia coming into this Portuguese Grand Prix, 3 successive Grand Prix DNFs for the first time in 5 long years. Just shows the sort of massive slump in form that Bagnaia's had of late. We have to say, of course, his exit in Malaysia was not anything to do with him, unfortunately. Falling foul of a very, very rare Michelin puncher.
Of course, had won the sprint the previous day in Sepang. Certainly can't say that Pecco Bagnaia was slow in Sepang. He was just out of luck on the Sunday afternoon. Hasn't exactly looked particularly fast so far here, though. As mentioned, outpaced by his new teammate for the next couple of weekends, Nicolo Bulega. I'm sure that's not the yardstick that Bagnaia is measuring himself against. He'll be more concerned, I guess, to find that he was over a second adrift of pace setter Alex Marquez earlier on today, and spent the entirety of the morning session outside the top 15. So Bagnaia, once again, as we so often see in 2025, ending FP1 with more questions than answers.
He's battered, he is bruised, but he's not beaten at the moment. There's Raul Fernandez. These are going to be some pretty painful laps, though, coming their way of the Spanish ride. You could just see there in the background Dr. Angel Chartra keeping a very close eye, a watchful eye on the 25-year-old Spaniard. Of course, DNFing last time out in Sepang, only the third time this year, actually, that Fernandez has not seen a checker flag on a Sunday. Hasn't got a great record here, actually, in Portimao as the 25-year-old. DNFs in both MotoGPs and sprints, and he did have to withdraw 1 year through injury as well. So this Algarve International Circuit, not a particularly happy hunting ground in the past for Fernandez.
So not in MotoGP, did win here in Moto 3 back in the day and in Moto 2. Certainly a bruising start to this Portuguese Grand Prix weekend for our most recent brand new winner in MotoGP, as we follow Marco Bezzecchi and take a look at one of the gentlemen instrumental in the progress that Aprilia have made in 2025. Even if that progress did get halted somewhat in Sepang a couple of weeks ago, not a circuit nor conditions that Aprilia particularly thrived in. A very revealing interview earlier on today with Paolo Bonora speaking to our Jack in pit lane, where he basically accepted that it took and they were too far back down the grid, and then make the wrong front tyre choice in the race itself, just lacking the ultimate edge grip on that medium front tyre to truly compete for a top 6, which Bezzecchi picked up in the sprint. We're certainly expecting an awful lot more from the Noali factory this weekend.
Made the right front tyre choice this morning, did Bezzecchi. Went out late on a fresh, soft front tyre. That catapulted him to a 1:39.341. Best start to a Grand Prix for Bez since he topped the FP1. He was a real headline grabber, wasn't he? Nicolo Bulliger, 14th fastest on his MotoGP debut. A dream come true, he said. Unfortunately, having to replace Marc Marquez, but jumping on the World Championships bike and jumping into the action and doing a sterling job. Let's go and get an update on the Italian from Jack down in pit lane.
Yeah, it all makes sense why he made such a fast start now, because the unusual setting for Nicolo Bulliger in his side of the boxes, not only has he got a World Championship winning crew chief in Marco Rigamonti there, but he's also got sat next to him Tommaso Raponi, who's his crew chief from World Superbikes. The pair of them are both sat in the back of the box. He's got two crew chiefs for the weekend, with Raponi acting as almost an intermediary. Obviously, from his time working together in World Superbikes, nobody knows Bulliger better than Raponi. So to try and help that relationship with Marco Rigamonti, the pair of them are both sat there in the back of the box, working in tandem to try and get the best out of Nicolo Bulliger this weekend. It's quite the scene, seeing both crew chiefs sat there in the box, listening to his comments when he comes back in.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jack. Yeah, I mean, the Ducati, they have a particular affinity, don't they, with Nicolo Bulliger. There's a very big reason why they're hiring him alongside Michele Pirro to do so much behind-the-scenes work next year on the new 850cc Desmond Sedici, in conjunction with the new Pirelli tyre era as well. He'll be a busy rider next year, Will Bulliger. Of course, this is all with one eye on him making a full-time switch to the MotoGP World Championship in 2027. Of course, he has incredibly close ties with Valentino Rossi from back in the day, formerly part of the VR46 Academy before his career did go down a bit of a blind alley. But World Supersport champion with Ducati, 20 World Superbike victories with Ducati over the last couple of years, second in the last 2 World Superbike championships, and if he continues this upward trend, well, 2027 we might well be welcoming a renewal of the Bulliger-Razgatlioglu rivalry in MotoGP.
And I think you've got a long way to find anyone who's not picking Bulliger as the runaway favourite for the World Superbike Championship in 2026 either, particularly with Toprak heading our way to MotoGP next season. We had that little shower late in Moto2 practice, but absolutely nothing wrong with track conditions at the moment. Pedro Costa has already matched Alex Marquez's 39.1 from earlier on today, and noticeable to see already the pace of this man, Pecco Bagnaia, who's already into the 39s this morning. Didn't find a 39 in FP1, did a 40.3 for his best lap time, but Bagnaia into the 39s and soon straight into the 38s.
Good news for Bagnaia, because the last time he was 17th on a Friday morning, it was in Mandalika, and his weekend completely unravelled from that point onwards. Yellow flags are out in sector 4. We've got somebody down at turn 13. We're trying to pick out
46 Ducati, I think, looking at the track map.
Who's gone down at turn 13. Then we've had a fall. Alex Marquez, it's Frankie Morbidelli then that has gone down. Morbidelli was pretty fast out the gates this morning, briefly inside the top 3, eventually finished the session in 6th place for the 139.534. Yellow flag, as you can see, has now been cleared. Frankie Morbidelli then early on, he's only just got into the 42s, Frankie, so and he's nicked a scooter. He said, I'll take this one, thank you very much, I'll take it from here. And I think, the photographer, Julie Obliging.
Yeah, if you want it back, stop by the VR46 box later on. So this is coming through 12 now. 13 is then up ahead of us. The tight left-hander taking in second gear, around about 65 kilometres an hour. Front 10 washing away for Frankie Morbidelli. A relatively harmless crash, as harmless as you can get around this roller coaster venue.
I'm not surprised that Morbidelli has probably seconded that scooter, because wasn't Jorge Martin who had a crash recently, and he said the scariest part of the whole experience was getting the scooter ride back to the paddock. Where was that? It was in Mazzano, I think, wasn't it? I think it was when he was it Mazzano? Well, that was when he had the breakdown, wasn't it? He had the bike, the Aprilia, conked out him, didn't it, on the sighting lap, and he said, yeah, the thing that really got his pulse racing was the scooter ride back from the Marshall into the paddock. Oh, there's another follower, that's Luca Marini. So Luca Marini has totaled that factory Honda. You can just see the exhaust all bent out of shape there. That's gone quite a long way into the gravel. So turn 13 proving a rather perilous corner so far this afternoon into Portimao. Here's Marini then just watching the front out. As soon as he flicked it left there, Marini, probably still trail braking in a little bit. He's really angry because that's his #1 bike that's going to need a real big repair job. So Marini goes down when he was 7th, also threatening a 38 there, wasn't he himself, the Italian? So it hasn't been the best of starts for two of our high-profile Italians, Morbidelli and Marini, down an unlucky turn 13 for that pair.
Morbidelli already back in the box, so at least that photographer now knows where he can find his scooter when he returns to the paddock later on this afternoon. So already in this session, we've got 7 riders who've dropped into the 138. Alex Marquez, as he was earlier on today, a good step ahead of the rest, 1/4 of a second inside Pedro Acosta's time, which puts him P2 on a 38.5. Then it's Zarco. Bagnaia much more on the pace this afternoon so far, up in 4th, ahead of Fermin Aldeguer 5th, Binder 6th. They're all in the 38s because we've had lap times cancelled elsewhere. We've got Marini next up from Bezzecchi, Quartararo, who's just on a 39.2, and Joan Mir 10th. Already, though, very early stages, but a fast pace to kick off this afternoon session here in Portimao.
Bagnaia didn't threaten a 39 this morning, so it's been a massive step forward in performance already from the Italian, already into sort of the high to mid 38s. That's much more like it. As far as the number 63 is concerned, you can just see Bagnaia moving out of your picture there as we pick up Acosta, who's been rapid straight out of the gate here this afternoon, this practice session. You do wonder whether a few riders might be trying to crack on, get a reference lap time in early here with the threat of rain and maybe coming on a little bit later on this afternoon. I have to say that the rain has been very, very fine. As I was walking back from our lunch break to join Lewis in the comms box for this MotoGP session, there was spots of rain, but it was incredibly fine. I mean, you could barely feel it on your head. And trust me, I've got a weather radar that's better than most people in the MotoGP paddock, as Acosta just runs in hot at the first corner. He had just set his best time of day one here, a 138.485. Such a tricky braking zone, this, isn't it? You're decelerating from 6th gear, 350 kilometres an hour. Of course, as you grab a handful of brake, it takes a load of weight off the rear, downhill as well, chucking a load of weight over that front tyre too. Probably one of the most severe and toughest braking zones on the whole Grand Prix calendar, because if you get it wrong, well, as Ralph Fernandez will attest to, it can go spectacularly wrong. Connie, let's have a check on Raul. How's he getting on? He's done 4 laps. 4 laps, a 141.937 from Ralph Fernandez, of course, who will be checked throughout this session after that heavy get-off this morning at 2.
Quick Nicolo Buliga check. He's in 19th place at the moment, 140.089. So credit to Buliga. He's already matched the lap time he did earlier on today in free practice 1. Just at 1.8 seconds off the pace. Guess it'd be quite natural to suddenly raise expectations on Nicolo Buliga from what we saw earlier on today. Of course, this is a racetrack that he knows very well. Won here earlier in the year in the World Superbike Championship, took race 2 and denied Toprak Razgatoglu a hat-trick on that particular weekend. But of course, we just have to remind ourselves of what he's up against here this weekend. He's up against the best riders in the world on the most sophisticated motorcycles in the world that they have been riding for 21 Grand Prix weekends now, all season long. Nicolo Buliga has only done, what, around about 50 laps on board that Ducati, all told, since he jumped on it for the very first time.
Marco Bezzecchi, 7th fastest. Massimo Rivola looking on. As we heard Aprilia boss Paolo Bonora speaking to Jack this morning, Aprilia are about to find out very, very quickly, it sounds like, whether Jorge Martin will be fit enough to return to action in our final Grand Prix of the season in Valencia next weekend. If you've been following Jorge Martin on his Instagram profile, his X-profile, you will see that he has left no stone unturned since that sprint crash in Motegi, where he cleaned out this rider on screens, his teammate Marco Bezzecchi. He has been working 24/7 as Martin to try and get himself back in action in Valencia. There are some vital medical checks, it seems, coming up very, very soon, where we'll find out whether Martin will be back for the final play in 2025 or whether he will join Marc Marquez and on the sidelines until 2026. As we look at Bezzecchi, 1:39.023, the best from Bez so far this afternoon. He's already picked up 3/10 compared to his pace this morning.
So it's Ducati, KTM, Honda, Ducati, KTM at the moment inside the top 6. Brad Binder will be one of their most happy riders, I think, at this stage of the session, up in 6th place. This was a pretty good circuit for KTM last year. They got 3 riders home inside the top 5, and of course Pedro Acosta on the podium. Binder so far through this season, generally his problems largely start on a Friday. Finds himself in qualifying 1 so often this season, and every time we've seen him in qualifying 1, he hasn't emerged out of it. His only Q2 appearances have been the automatic route in 2025, so important for the South African to get himself into the top 10 at the end of this session, and he's had a strong start to this session, straight into the 138s.
Yeah, it was the first time last year when those 3 KTMs finished inside the top 5 that that's ever happened for the Austrian brand. As we look at Acosta going about his work, so impressed, isn't it, of late? Just look at this by Acosta. He is so cool to watch. He is just constantly fighting a battle to chase grip on that KTM, or chasing grip that will last. That's been his issue, particularly over those flyaway runs in all 4 really, Japan, Mandalika, Phillip Island and in Sepang. It was the fact that he had the initial grip on a new tyre, but the deterioration in grip levels on the KTM was pretty pronounced compared to some of the other brands. Fabio Quartararo, he ain't stopping that. That got all out of shape, didn't it, from Fabio as he squeezed a handful of braid down the hill. I don't know if he might have just whacked his shin on the foot peg there, maybe.
Yeah. Or perhaps twisted his or strained his calf muscle there as he was straining so hard to get the bike stopped. Watch his right foot then as he tries to get it stopped. Yeah, the bike's moving around underneath him, and perhaps just clipped his shin or his heel maybe on board the motorcycle, which he then reaches for as he comes through the corner. You can certainly never question Quartararo's commitment, can you?
10 out of 10 for effort to get that one stop, Fabio, but sadly, I don't even think, well, obviously his skills not good enough to pull that Yamaha up on the brakes down the hill into turn 1. Joan Mir, 11th fastest at the moment. He was 8th quickest this morning, just 1 place behind his teammate Marini. We've already seen Marini, of course, on the floor. 1 of 2 crashes this afternoon already at turn 13. Loving these beautiful slow motion replays here in Portimao. This feels like, as always, the calm before the storm. It's gone very quiet out on this Portimao circuit at the moment. Only Quartararo, Frankie Morbidelli just heading out on circuit, Savadori, Alex Marquez just leaving out as well, and Niagara. They're the only quartet currently out on circuit. Well, Ralph Fernandez, after that heavy crash this morning in FP1, it was always going to be a tough mission for him this afternoon. How's it getting on, Jack?
Yeah, it is positive news for Raul. As Davide told us at the start of the session, they wanted to do that first run of 4 or 5 laps just to get an understanding of how that shoulder and that arm felt, with Davide confirming there was a partial dislocation during that crash at turn 1. He had a brief conversation with Dr. Angel Charter, a thumbs up from both him and Davide Brivio. Helmet back on, it looks as though Raul is going to continue on with this session, which is great news.
Yeah, brilliant news. Thanks very much for that update, Jack. As you can see there, sort of mixed skies. A bit of blue sky on the right-hand side of your picture. That's just overlooking the nearby Algarve race resort. You can see that white building in the background, just a short 5-minute drive away from the circuit itself. Pretty good view from the bar there, I have to say, in the restaurant of some parts of this Portimao circuit. I'm not speaking from experience, of course.
Yeah, we are staying just a stone's throw
very,
away.
Very handy, very handy location for this Algarve Grand Prix. Frankie Morbidelli then has dusted himself down, back out on circuit. In fact, he's coming up now to turn 13, where he dumped one of those Ducati GP24s right at the start of this session. This time around, he's safely negotiated it. A very worn front tyre there, though, as you can see, it's Frankie. 19 laps already he's done on that soft run. I guess he's had to go over onto old tyres because he would have started, maybe not, maybe he would have started on a worn front tyre. But yeah, that number 1 bike was on the floor, wasn't it, at turn 13. Doesn't look like the most stable of motorcycles underneath Frankie at the moment, does it, as he powers down now to the first corner. That is his best lap of the session. 141.658 as Frankie looks to find some lost confidence.
Yeah, just taking a look at Morbidelli this morning, he did the entire session this morning on a single soft front tyre as the yellow flags briefly flashed up at turn 5. Whatever has brought them out is now cleared. So yeah, the front tyre that Morbidelli is now on is the front tyre that he ran for the entirety of FP1 earlier on today, and unless they managed to get that bike back and the tyre wasn't damaged, then that's one brand new tyre that he's already lost in this Portuguese Grand Prix weekend.
Well, once Alex Marquez said the fastest time this morning, or hit the top of the timesheets this morning, that was it. And nobody really got anywhere near it. Johan Zarco, that looks like he's had a mechanical here on the LTR Honda. As he looks for some assistance trackside. That's why the yellow flags were out briefly then into turn 5. Zarco's had a real positive start this Portuguese Grand Prix. 4th fastest this morning. Tech issue for Zarco. He's 3rd quickest, or he was 3rd quickest when this particular disruption, an unwanted distraction, came his way. A 138.620 Zarco had fired him, which was almost a second quicker than anything he managed this morning. So he has been fast throughout day 1 here today.
Said he got a lot of confidence back in Malaysia last time out. Of course, that Honda has changed quite a bit that Johan Zarco's riding in recent rounds. Of course, he was shaking the tree quite hard to get some of the upgrades that the factory team had been running and making progress with in the preceding Grand Prix. He's finally, in recent times, got hold of some of those upgrades, but it's required a very different style of riding for Johan Zarco, and he hasn't exactly found it easy going getting to full grips with that. It is still not a natural riding style for Zarco on board the current iteration of the RC213V, but clearly with some added confidence, he's looking in good shape so far this weekend. He was 4th already this morning and still up inside the top 3 even with those problems.
It's been a bit of a mixed bag so far this afternoon for some of the Honda quartet. We've seen a crash for Luca Marini. We've seen a mechanical now for Johan Zarco. What's an update on the Italian, Jack?
Yeah, Marini now back out on track, but I was just thinking about that crash, and we know from the statistics that nobody crashes less than Luca Marini in MotoGP. In fact, his first one of the season, full stop, came in Malaysia last time out, so a huge rarity to see him crash, in particular at the start of the session. Now, we mentioned this morning that he had that radically new seat unit, hugely different in shape and size. We understand that it's going to have a big impact on the balance of the bike and the behaviour of the bike as a result. First time putting soft tyres into it and having to push ever so slightly harder than what we saw this morning with the rain sort of hanging around means that that's probably the first time Marini has had to push with this new balance of the bike, and that unnatural feeling, I imagine, is the thing that's caught him out and seen him have only a very, very rare crash, because it made me think something has to have happened there for Marini to go down, because we just so often do not see that happen. So my theory is that change of balance is the thing that has potentially just caught him out.
They are collector's items, aren't they? Luca Marini crashes in 2025. It took him all the way until last time out in Sepang to have his first crash of the campaign. And there he was down at turn 13. Yeah, good observation, as always there, Jack, as there was a little bit of a tete-a-tete between two of our experienced Spaniards, Pol Espargaro versus Alex Marquez on the run down to the first corner.
Perhaps the only thing that's got in Alex Marquez's way so far today, because he's dominating this Portuguese Grand Prix weekend so far. Looked from the one view we got at it as if perhaps Pol Espargaro did just roll off a little bit in the middle of turns 1 and 2, with Alex Marquez right behind him and having to to react himself to shut off behind. Tony Alex was waving at Paul, and Paul was giving as good as he got in voicing his opinion back in the direction of the 73. At the moment, Alex Marquez then quickest by 0.2 of a second from Acosta. Paul Espargaro, he's in 15th place at the moment on a 39.6.
Here's Jack Miller having a little bit of a look here at the hard front tyre. We haven't seen that too often so far on this day one here in Portimao. So in a bit of experimental mode at the moment is the 43 as he climbs over the brow and then attacks hard down into 6th gear. Miller at the moment in 14th place. He's got down to the mid 139s, which is pretty much where he ended play this morning. So yeah, Miller just a bit out of kilter with some of his rivals, having a bit of a check on that hard front.
We haven't got the usual time information on our timing screens in the commentary box, so we're reacting the same way as you when it pops up on the rider lap clock at the bottom of the screen. So you can see there that Miguel Oliveira and Fermin Aldeguer, medium front, soft rear. The empty background behind the letter means that it's a used tyre. If it's a solid background, it means they're on a KTM's 2nd and 6th, and we've got a Honda of Zarco 3rd, 2 Hondas in fact in the top 10, with Marini, despite his crash, up in 9th.
Well, Paul Espargaro, probably with a little bit of red mist, a little bit of angle inside that helmet, could be using that as a motivation here, because he's about to set his fastest time of this afternoon session, isn't he, on the 44 KTM Tech 3 machine, still replacing the absent Maverick Vinales, and he has channeled that anger into a very good lap time, hasn't he? Has Paul, a 138.721, darts him up inside the top 4. So it's still Alex Marquez looking a cut above the rest this afternoon, just as he was in FP1 this morning. A couple of tenths he is clear of Acosta. Johan Zarco, despite his mechanical gremlins, which are going to cost him some valuable track time in this 60-minute session, still sits in 3rd, and it is Paul Espargaro, having just leapt up into 4th spot. Pega Bagnaia on your screens now, he's at 5th. Aldeguer 6th, Bindabet, Secchi, Quattararo and Marini in the top 10, and we'll be hoping to stay there at the end of play to book a spot directly into tomorrow morning's Q2 session.
What we saw earlier on this morning was that so much of the time that Alex Marquez was gaining was in the final sector. Joan Mir really asking some big questions at the front end of his Honda as he now enters the final sector of this lap. It's this part of the lap where Alex Marquez was super strong, particularly through the final corner. The fast right-hander, which we know from Marc Marquez telling us earlier in the season, Alex is super strong at. He's got to navigate his way around the bumps of the final corner as the 2020 world champion. Now climbing up over the hill and over the finish line. Mir goes from 12th up into the top 10, but once again he lost half a second to Alex Marquez just in that final sector.
Fair play to Buliger as well. He's just put in, there he is on the screens, a 139.484. Just getting quicker and quicker and quicker, isn't he, as he gets more confidence and more experience on that GP25, does Buliger. Ralph Fernandez has just completed his 7th lap of the session. It was his fastest, a 140.107. And Frankie Morbidelli, having had that sort of blow to his confidence with the early crash at turn 13, and the fact that he's now on a very well-worn and abused Michelin front tyre, there's not really much going pace-wise as far as Frankie's concerned. A 141.658 is his best time of the afternoon. That's still almost a full second behind Lorenzo Savadori, 1 spot ahead of him in 21st.
Of course, taking absolutely nothing away from Nicolo Buliger. He's doing an outstanding job so far today, but I guess it is worth pointing out that he hasn't got any of perhaps the baggage of having ridden a GP24 to worry about. He's just jumping from a Ducati Panigale World Superbike machine onto a Ducati GP25 MotoGP machine and treating it on its merits. I guess at the root of so much of Pecco Bagnaia's confidence crisis in 2025 is that he's been used to a bike in 24 that works so well, and he's now jumping on a bike in 2025 which by contrast does not give him the confidence that he needs. Buliger, I guess, doesn't have that problem, but of course the big disadvantage he has is his inexperience on board any kind of MotoGP machinery, and he's making little light of that at the moment.
That onboard shot gave a clear indication from Acosta's factory KTM of just how it's getting a little bit darker once again here in Portimao. Some of that nice sort of blue sky that we saw poking through the clouds just a few moments ago, well, that has quickly been swallowed up by some rather threatening and ominous looking grey clouds once again. It's certainly gone a little bit darker in our commentary box position. I'm looking out now onto the start finish rate, and I'm sad to report there's not a lot of blue sky to cheer us up at the moment. So yeah, there'll be a few nervy and anxious faces. As you can see here now on board with Bezzecchi, just a bit of blue sky towards the latter part of the circuit. This is him dropping down through turns 8 and 9. But apart from that, in other parts it is very, very dark, and there was the forecast for the potential return of rain at some stage towards the end of this session.
And this, of course, has come mere minutes after we made some running repairs here in our commentary box to shield us from the bright sunshine that was overhead. So now we need the light on in our commentary box. The weather changing in the same way that it generally does in places like Phillip Island through the season. We haven't quite had all 4 seasons in one day, but yeah, the weather has changed at least 2 or 3 times already through this afternoon. Each of the Moto 3 and Moto 2 afternoon sessions were interrupted by a little flurry of rain. Of course, the MotoGP session earlier on today was 2, so could this tempt 1 or 2 riders to perhaps go a little bit early on a soft rear tyre just to make sure they've got a lap on the board?
It's a great shot there from that outside camera. You could see Marco Bezzecchi as he powered out of the second gear, turn 14. You could just see him short shifting with his left boot there, up through the gears, up a couple of gears there. He was into 4th to attack down the hill, 225 kilometers an hour. Love that shot. Brilliant to see Bez just short shifting on that factory Aprilia as he attacked that 4th sector. Back with Acosta. That was not the sort of optimal line, was it, going through turn 30? You've got to be careful there. We've seen Morbidelli and Marini already find themselves on the backsides in that particular corner. It's now Acosta. These last 2 right-handers, fortune really does favour the brave in this part of this Portimao circuit. Acosta then now, he'll just get it on the fat part of the tyre and then duck under the screen, try and make himself as aerodynamic as he possibly can, cut through the air. Still second fastest is the 37, a 138.485.
Got to give a shout out to Raul Fernandez, who is gritting his teeth. He is fighting through whatever pain he's in. He's just done his best lap of the day, a 139.610. Yeah, he's 1.3 seconds off the pace, but still prepared to take the risks in this session and put it all on the line, despite the fact that he is far from 100%. Here's Marco Bezzecchi, who's on that brand new hard front tyre, and he's upwardly mobile in this practice session.
There's a couple of riders now have decided to have a little bit of a look at that hard front. As Acosta, he's so good in that first sector. We saw him make some awesome overtakes down the hill into turn 1 last year. He put a real move, didn't he, on his new teammate at that time, Brad Binder, in just his 2nd start in MotoGP. That is the best time of practice so far for Bez, a 138.984, as his fellow Italian looks on. No drama so far in this session for Bez and Bagnaia. Can't say the same about Morbidelli and Marini, their VR46 Academy stablemates. Frankie Morbidelli's only done 6 laps in this session so far. I suspect he's probably done those initial 6 laps on what is a very, very used front tyre. Just for reference, race distance here on Sunday, 25 laps. The sprint tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. local time will be over 12 laps. And there's a bit of a rejig, of course, to our schedule on Sunday. A potential title decider in Moto 2. We'll get the race day action underway at 11:15 a.m. local time. 1 p.m. local time here in Portugal will be the start of that 25-lap battle in MotoGP, with the revised race day schedule to accommodate Central European TV schedules. We'll see our race day finalised or completed by what is always a pretty epic Moto 3 battle here in Portugal.
Moto 3 battle that Pedro Acosta has already won on 2 previous occasions in 2021, the second of which saw him clinch the Moto 3 World Championship as a rookie. Look how much he's pushing as the rear snaps sideways, but Pedro Acosta, as always, does a brilliant job of keeping it under control. The Yamaha of Fabio Quartararo, the rear tyre does briefly snake sideways, but as always with Quartararo, he asks so many questions at the front, and now the Yamaha and the rear tyre popping up in the air as he tries to get that M1 stopped.
Just look at the compression, initial compression on the front forks, on those Öhlins forks. You can just see how much force they're putting through the front tyre, through the front suspension here on those MotoGP bikes as you decelerate by well in excess of 200 kilometers an hour, back 3 gears for that relatively tight first corner. So many riders spoke yesterday when they were asked, what's the key to a fast lap, what's the key to a success story around the Algarve International Circuit? And they all say you just have to have confidence, you have to have trust to really fling it into some of these blind entries, really have the confidence to tip it into some of these high-speed corners. Well, turn one is a corner where you really do have to have full confidence and trust in that front end, because it's so easy to get caught out, as we're about to pick up Bezzecchi over the crest. That turn 9, it really does take your breath away, doesn't it, as he now powers up then into this second part of a sort of massive downhill section. It's like an alpine skiing event, this, isn't it, really? Just at 200 miles an hour for these MotoGP riders. Into 13, then Bezzecchi goes. Of course, on that new hard front, but a well-worn soft rear tyre at this stage of the session. Just a bit of race data, a bit of information being collected here by the factory Aprilia start.
Jones Arco, he's now gone out medium, which we saw as a bit of a potent combination for Jack Miller in free practice one earlier on today. It is the same combination and specification of Michelin tyres that they brought to last year's Portuguese Grand Prix, even though we did come here in March last year. We're now coming here early in November, and everyone here last year did race the hard front, medium rear combination. So much asked of the front tyre around the circuit such as this. The vast majority wanted that support that comes from the hard front tyre. Of course, we're hoping and expecting that everyone's going to require slicks on Sunday afternoon. Today was the day where the inclement weather was expected. It is predicted at least to settle down a little bit as we go through the weekend.
Well, on a fully functional and fully working RC213V Honda, it is now Joan Zarco who we pick up, still keeping himself inside that top 3. This feels like it's been the best Friday for quite some time, doesn't it? A fully 35-year-old Frenchman hasn't had a top 6 in the last 13 Grand Prix since his British Grand Prix podium at Silverstone. So top results, eye-catching results have been few and far between, haven't they, of late for Zarco? Pretty cool. Well, certainly cool if you compare it to Sepang 2 weeks ago, as the surface temperature here just around sort of 23 degrees centigrade, 73 degrees Fahrenheit. As we pick up Aldeguer now, charging through the final corner. A brand new medium rear tyre is carrying Joan Mir to a pretty strong lap time. We'll keep a close eye on the progress of the 2020 world champion, as Aldeguer keeps himself inside the top 6. As you can see, this is a brand new medium rear tyre that Mir has fitted to his RC213V. 10 laps he's already done then on the front. You can see he's lost a whole chunk.
Gitu lagi. Emang si Hadi guys, tahun ranknya epic. Ih, Putri.
He loves this place. KTM have had some success here in the past as well. Is there that same expectation that this is the weekend potentially?
Wow. No, I don't want to call it the weekend, you know. It's like it was so difficult from the beginning of the year to build a good base, and I feel we got that base, and so like to fight again consistently for the podium, that's our like ultimate target. I know Pedro wants that win so badly, and of course it would be just amazing for the whole project, for everybody involved. But I'm not just looking at that win. It's like we need to just be better on the base to be sure every weekend, every session we can fight for the podium. And I feel we are just on a really good way for that. That's our first big target, and then that win will come for Pedro and it will come for us. I'm confident. But yeah, so far the weekend looks good. We had 2 constructive sessions so far.
See. Anjing.